Welcome to our 2024 season of the Cloud Industry Forum presents TWF! We're speaking to you from our mixed reality newsroom style set, courtesy of our friends here at Disruptive Live. This is our new style video podcast where each week we interview a guest from our members or from someone with something to say about cloud technology or transformation or what's coming next. I'm David Terrar. I'm the CEO of the Cloud Industry Forum, which is a not-for-profit trade body that champions and helps accelerate the adoption of cloud technology and services. If you want to find out more about us, we're at cloudindustryforum.org. I'm at DT on X, David_Terrar with an A, on Threads and Instagram, and easy to find on LinkedIn. Today we've decided to talk about some of the history, good and bad, in the development of cloud technology. See what lessons that we learned from then that might apply to now and the explosion and hype around artificial intelligence that we're all experiencing since ChatGPT came on the scene 15 months ago. Now, I've known our guest a long time, a distinguished analyst who, like me, has a direct experience of a lot of technology changes over decades. I am delighted to welcome Tony Locke of Freeform Dynamics. Tony, please, can you introduce yourself, your company, what you do?
Certainly. I'm Tony Locke. I've been an analyst now for more than 20 years. Before that, I spent 18 years as an IT professional. Started off in Fortran coding, and then became a system manager looking after everything from mainframes down to those pesky things called PCs and the users associated with them over time. I spent 3 years then working on the dark side as a pre-sales guy, selling service management solutions and security solutions, things like this. But as an analyst, I look at infrastructure and its means to deliver services to users. It's a pretty broad portfolio. As a company, Freeform Dynamics, we do a lot of end user research to understand, well, what are people doing? And more importantly, why are they doing what they're doing? And how can we use that information to help other people in the IT community move forwards as quickly as possible to best exploit the IT opportunities open to them?
Got it. Now, you mentioned Freeform Dynamics. Give me an idea of the kind of range of and type of organizations that you work with.
We work with organizations of all sizes and all types. On the vendor side, we work with the very largest of vendors, from the global giants down to very small startups and local organizations, literally everybody in between. And that covers a range of technologies from the core infrastructure itself and components, through the systems, through the management tools and security, all of that side up to the ERP systems and SaaS, etc. And we talk to a lot of cloud vendors as well. On the end user side, we talk to people all the time, of all, again, sizes, IT directors, systems managers, people in the line of business and finance managers to get their view of things. So we try to talk to as many people as possible to get the big picture.
Excellent. Now, before we get into some of the cloud history and AI and the AI explosion, as a starting point, what's your view of cloud technology as it stands today?
Cloud technology as it stands today is relatively mature, at least in some areas, particularly around virtual machines and its delivery into end customers of services. But there's one issue there, and that's that cloud technology. It covers a multitude of different technologies. Cloud isn't one thing. It involves obviously those infrastructure as a service and patterns, but it also includes the SaaS side of things. And increasingly, it can also include private cloud on-prem and the mixture of off-prem, on-prem, SaaS and on-prem mixing together and becoming hybrid cloud. So it's a very mature space in some areas. In some others, such as maybe container technology and certainly serverless, there's we've been using those things and we've been building them much less for a much shorter period of time, and that means that they are not as mature as obviously the more developed systems that we've been running since more than 15, 20 years. So it's a mixture of things. The vast majority of the cloud industry as used by the viewers, that is basically pretty mature and it's part of everyday life for most organizations.
Excellent. Now, I'd suggest that last year, 2023, was a pivotal year, an inflection point, the start of some significant change. And going back to 1969, that was significant. It was the start of computing and automation and everything that eventually led to the internet and what the World Economic Forum calls the third industrial revolution. Then in 2007, that was a pivotal year. It was the year that we probably started using the cloud computing term, simultaneously with using social media in business, simultaneously with the rise of mobile computing and web apps. We call that the Web 2.0 era, or the World Economic Forum calls it the fourth industrial revolution, which brings us to now and what happens next. But before we talk about now and next, let's go back to 2007 when cloud started. What kind of things did we get right and what did we get wrong about this term cloud computing?
One thing I would say there is that this idea of having these turning points, that these pivot points, that's very much, in our experience, a view of the vendor industry and the cloud service provider industry, rather than that of the end organizations using these services. What we tend to find are that organizations basically change very slowly.
Yes.
So 2007 might have been a big year for the industry and particularly for the marketing of the cloud industry. But for users and the end enterprises, things change much more slowly. There are still technologies in enterprises that are maybe 10 years past their last support date.
Yes.
We find that there's an awful lot of inertia in there. So those pivotal points that you mentioned, they tend not to be discrete in chunks like you have, but much more of a curve and a slow ramp up and then fade out. So what did we do right back in the beginning and what did we do wrong? I'll start with what did we do wrong because I'm Tony Locke. What did we do wrong? Basically the hype, and you sort of gave a hint of that right back at the intro to this webcast. So the hype there that everybody would automatically go to cloud, everything would move to cloud as rapidly as possible, and if you didn't, then you were going to lose. Yeah. That really inhibited an awful lot of people. When we were talking to organizations back in 2007, 2008, 2009, they were much more pragmatic.
Yeah.
They said, we're not bleeding edge organizations. We want to see that this stuff works. So, as we see the value in there for us as a user, we'll use it. Find a place for it inside our business. But it's probably not going to be everywhere. And over the course of the last 20 years, we've found that opinion is actually still valid today. The proportion that's moved to cloud in its various guises may have changed, but there's still on-site and cloud and mixes of the two. So the hype was the big thing we got wrong. Maybe the thing that we got right was also partly linked to that hype, and that was by giving people outside of IT the idea that there was something new, even though maybe it wasn't as new as we said it was. But that got the folks in business actually understanding there's a new option here, should we do it? Unfortunately for some IT departments, that had a consequence that a lot of the marketing was, hey guys, you should be doing this. And that often forced those people without the understanding of the core infrastructure to say, hey, we've got to be doing this, we've got to be doing this. Why aren't we doing this? And that maybe forced some bad decisions to be made or some poor experience, which again inhibited the long-term rollout of cloud. We've got over that hump now. But that was, the biggest plus and minus of it was the hype.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we're certainly in the hype of artificial intelligence, but interestingly, that's a term that's been around for 74 years.
Yep.
What's your take on what happened last year? Although it actually started, was it November 2022, and then when ChatGPT was launched, and then all of last year we were talking generative AI and large language models and the like. What's your take on how that's happened, and what do you think? hopefully we'll do a better job of getting things right?
It's an interesting question. When we've been looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning over the last few years, as you say, it's been around for a long time. And indeed, some elements of this, particularly on the machine learning side, are extremely well embedded
Yeah.
inside many organizations already, particularly in production line systems, checking for faults, in ERP systems, in supply chain management, things like that. They've been well embedded for a long time. But as you say, the idea of generative AI coming along has thrown up new opportunities. It's also throwing up new challenges as well. So the idea that anybody can use something like ChatGPT or Gemini, as it's now called in the last week, or the others, has really reached everybody. But what we also think are that people need to be very careful about how this gets rolled out again. Because if you try and roll this out to everybody inside the organization at once, there's a good chance we might have a degree of chaos come in here as well. So there's lots of opportunities, but it's not something I think that people should rush into headlong. You've got to know why you're doing it and how to do it. The technology is good, but it's still very much in its infancy. So we need that to mature a lot more before it becomes robust, reliable. And it's something that people need to understand, that there is a significant difference between the way that large language models work and the way that people's heads work. They're not the same.
And it's interesting that you do think that kind of like the signal to noise problems that we had at the start of cloud are here today with the hype around AI.
I actually think they're probably much worse.
Okay.
The marketing industry itself has come on in leaps and bounds. And as you pointed out, there are so many more channels of communication now that it's very hard to avoid. And what we've found are that the almost everybody is positioning their solutions with AI ML capabilities, irrespective of what the solution is. Very much like at the beginning of the cloud boom, every vendor was trying to position their services as cloud or cloud enabled. What we've found, though, is that this is having an impact on the end customer base. We ran a survey last year in the UK of CIOs where we found that quite a number of them, more than 80%, said that they thought they were being totally inundated with hype around AI and ML and its capabilities now. They see the potential in the future, but they're worried that this hype could also impact other parts of their business and bring the wrong sort of pressure on them, without the business understanding some of the constraints that they need to put in place around that, particularly in terms of process and governance, especially.
So are you saying it's those kind of things that we need to focus on to be doing a better job of getting this right? Things like governance and the like?
Using any technology without good governance is difficult. Using something like AI and ML, particularly with these large language models, when there are so many of the model bases already available, doing that without good governance is going to open the company up to potential problems going forwards with misuse of data or people just coming up with the wrong answers when they're asking questions of their AI ML systems. Uh, we're a bit like at the beginning of some of the early PC days, where one or two of the vendors, and I'm thinking of one in particular here that was on almost every desktop, making the case that people don't need training to use this. It's so easy, anybody can use it. It's true, anybody can use it, but using it well, using it accurately, using it securely is a different matter. The same applies today to AI, ML, and these large language models. You've got to target why you're using them first, and then how can you use them properly to make sure they're effective for the organization and deliver value.
Excellent. It's interesting that you've done your research. We produce a research report every year, and actually I just got the data for our new report 2 weeks ago, and I'm just starting to put together the report. But it's interesting that I'm not going to say the number because we've not published the results yet, but more than half of the people we surveyed are actually using AI in some way in their business, which I find fascinating. What are the kind of AI success stories that you've heard about that you're excited by?
Well, one thing I would say is that the survey I mentioned also showed there that a lot of people, as you said, are using these technologies already.
Yeah,
And more importantly, as they go forward, the number that see those solutions being embedded in the services that they're already using, whether that's a SaaS service or an enterprise ERP system or something that they build themselves, that's the way that most people think it's going to be used for them, certainly in the near term.
yeah,
The number of people that want to do something completely bespoke themselves is quite small, but they're there. It's interesting. The big success stories so far have been very much with that embedding into applications to optimize the use of what's going on there. One of the big things, obviously, is around the whole security area and SIM. You know, talk to any security professional out there watching, and the number of alerts and log streams that you have to keep an eye on is huge. Using AIML to actually make sense of that and distill it down so that the professionals can look at things that are really important rather than finding the noise. This is actually the opposite of that noise to value ratio. You can use AIML to get the value out of the noise in something like that. So that's a big area of success. The others are that embedding into those enterprise applications where it's optimizing some of the things that are happening. You've seen it on the website over the last few years where people might push to you to say, hey, look, you bought this and this before. You see this being something that you might like. Um, I buy a lot of books, and I've noticed that certainly over the last couple of years, the range of books that people are offering to me is getting closer to those that I actually read rather than the stuff that I wonder, where did they ever come up with that idea from? So we're seeing that it's happening a lot. And one thing that's happening here is that the entire IT community has recognized that there is something in this that people can exploit. We think most of it's going to get embedded into tools that the majority of people use, but there will be other cases for people to use. A big change from the way cloud developed, though, is literally the speed at which AIML is developing. Back in 2007, everybody thought that cloud was developing really rapidly. But compared to the speed that AI and ML is moving, the generational leaps are happening every 3 or 4 months with AI and ML on
yeah.
these large language models, whereas with cloud, it's maybe every 2 or 3 years. Sure, there are increments in between, but big generational changes are much further apart. So that speed of change that we've been talking about since 2007 is just accelerating.
I totally agree with that. Now, what about the other emerging technologies, things like the metaverse and distributed ledger technology and IoT and the edge? Are there any kind of more important emerging technologies I should be investing more time in, or what do you think?
It's the same question that people in IT always need to ask themselves if only they can get that time to step back. And that's what's really important to the business. How can we exploit these new technologies, these new ways of delivering service to the business to get the most value from it? Yeah, and not all of them will make sense at once. And some of them may not make sense at all. So it's a case of stepping back and saying, can we use this? How can we use it? And then pushing that forward. One thing I would say is that where possible, IT can really take charge now and say, look, we've got so many new technologies coming along so quickly. It's our job to work out how you, the business, can use this rather than rely on that marketing reaching the business people to get them to ask for things. But the metaverse, one thing I'd say there is it's not one thing, it's a collection of all different things.
Yeah.
A bit like cloud and a bit like AIML, but there's a lot of similarities here.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in all of these areas. Some of them are well established already. IoT and edge in manufacturing, in logistics, in supply chain, been there forever. It's now getting more and more automated, and that's that automation that's really important. And to a degree, that's where, again, machine learning and AI is probably going to help a lot by helping to optimize the automation of those processes and look for ways to make them more effective and efficient.
Good, good, good. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cloud Industry Forum, and so I'd suggest that cloud technology is still relevant today because it's a key technology enabler for AI and some of these other technologies that we've been talking about. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, one thing we've seen in IT are that old technologies very rarely completely fall off the table and stop being used.
Absolutely.
It takes a really long time.
Yep.
And frankly, some things keep going forever. People say the mainframe is, dead and dying, it should be extinct, but it keeps developing rapidly as well, and it's
Still
still
relevant.
integral to many things. Cloud has become equally integral. It's something that's mature in many areas. It's something that's continuing to develop. And something that's happened in the cloud industry itself are that those cloud vendors have stopped seeing cloud as being the be all and end all of everything. And they've recognized that hybrid world, everybody in the industry has, and they're working towards making it easier to integrate, not just with on-site and cloud services, but also between clouds. And that obviously gives them some competition friction. But that maturity and understanding of what the customer base is really going to look like going forwards means that cloud is just as important today as it was yesterday, and it will be just as important tomorrow, maybe even more important, especially as some of the things like AI and ML come along, where it might be better to run some things in a cloud service, that cloud training where you need huge amounts of processing power to generate your models to do your inferencing with, and then put that back maybe to an on-site or a hybrid model. So cloud, is important. It's going to stay important, and it's going to evolve.
Good stuff. Glad you're agreeing with me. That's really good. Now, for our audience, the key message
You can buy
is
me a beer next time.
definitely next time, because you're talking to me from Germany. So next time you're in London, definitely.
Absolutely.
Now, for in terms of what we've been talking about and kind of applying the lessons we learned from cloud and the way it developed to the AI issues now, what are the kind of key things you'd like our audience to take away from this conversation?
The big thing is to make sure you understand what your needs are, and also to look for potential ways to exploit things going forward. The other thing is to make sure that however you use cloud, however you use large language models, AI, ML, make sure that you've got good controls wrapped around it, good processes wrapped around it. One thing that worries us a bit about the AI, ML, and the large language model are that lots of the vendors are embedding it inside their systems, but they're looking to charge incrementally for different parts of it, which means that people could end up running big bills without actually realizing it, and maybe without actually having funding in place to pay for it. And then that usually means that IT ends up having to cut things somewhere else to pay for it because the business won't. So therefore, be careful. You can use this, but you've got to read that small print and make sure that you try to make the best use of it. Don't try and do everything at once. And the idea that you can roll out some of these things, like Copilot and the others, to everybody inside the organization in one go, with the cost of that involved, could have challenges as well. Because, as I said earlier, those users, could they use it? Yes. Could they be making mistakes? Almost certainly. Could they be not exploiting it well? Could they be opening up huge risks? Those are things that you need to be careful of. Work out where to use this first and roll out slowly. Look at this like any other IT project and plan it. Don't try and do everything at once. your viewers out there, they know this. We've been doing this forever.
Very good. Now, Tony, that's all been fantastic. But how do people find out about you and what you do and find out more about Freeform Dynamics? What do they do to find you?
Well, to find me, they can look on the back of the horse. But apart from that, our website is freeformdynamics.com, and you'll find lots of the information that we've been talking about there going back to 2007, and the research that we've carried out there. So that's really the best place to start. We are also on LinkedIn, of course, and Facebook, but our website's the best place to begin.
Excellent, Tony. Well, I want to say that from one EastEnder to another, thank you for being on the show. It's great to be talking about these tech milestones and the good and bad of cloud and the like. So a big thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
So I hope you enjoyed what Tony had to say about and his particular kind of analytical viewpoint of how we make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes with AI that we made with cloud back in the day. We'll be live next Wednesday at 2:30. We want your feedback. We want your suggestions. Maybe you want to come on the show, be a guest. Put something in the comments here or email us at info@cloudindustryforum.org. We're really looking forward to hearing from you, and we hope to see you next week or next time.